All right, welcome to the fourth Alchemer Training for the National or LHD Academy of Science. We're grateful to have Mike again here in this training, and we're also grateful for Elizabeth in the great state of Kentucky AOS group for going out and getting this NACHO. I do want to embarrass them. This past week, the Kentucky AOS group was recognized for an award within their state and all the great work that Elizabeth Shea and Sarah Jo and Carrie have done. They've really carried the torch. We've got so many great AOS groups and wins that come on. I'm going to share that everyone will be getting an email about that. It's good to see our AOS groups winning. Without further ado, we're going to turn over the focus of today's training is the Alchemer Training 4. So Mike, thanks for coming in.
Thank you, Jake.
And as always, I'm going to make you the co-host, and I will handle the chat as we go through. For those that are here in the training, please write down your questions as they come in. Mike pauses throughout the training and allows us to ask questions as we go through. So write them down in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Jake. Welcome, everyone. Great turnout. I appreciate everyone taking time out of the schedule to be here for the training, and hope you find it valuable. Let me share my screen, and just wanted to review the agenda before we officially get started. And I might be switching back and forth here, but let me go to the desktop too. And so this is the high level goal that I have down, and for the topics I want to cover during this training. This is hour 4, kind of a rough outline. One is question library and templates, basically how to use library questions and the benefit of using them, and also maybe having some surveys as a template to copy and paste in quickly. And then going further with our question types, preview of our intermediate and advanced question types as a guide, and then going into more of the ability to customize basic questions under the layout tab to do some really interesting things and hopefully valuable that are a little bit hidden. So I'll cover those. So that's the big agenda and the goals for today. Hopefully that is what everyone expected. But let me start with the first thing, and I'm going to start with the question types, and then I'll finish up with the library. So this is something that I'm going to send you the link to. So this is a survey that I built to make it a little bit easier to play and experience all of our question types. So this link, I will actually, let me see if I can do that now. I'll put it in the chat. And if you have a second screen, you can kind of play with it while I'm showing it. But let me put it in the chat stream here. Okay, so hopefully everyone can get it and access it in the chat. So these are the basic question types, and I've broken them out in the way we categorize them as basic, intermediate, and advanced. So I'll just run through and try to point out some things that could be beneficial about our intermediate and advanced question types. So slider, pretty self-explanatory. The respondent moves a little icon to set the location of the number typically. I think in general, from a respondent experience, this is subjective, but I think you could probably get this data a little bit easier or quicker using just a radio button or a Likert scale question where it's just a click and you see, 0 through 5. But that's subjective, but it's there for us to pick. Star rating grid, 1 to 5 type of interaction and lump together. Net promoter score, 0 to 10 scale. This is really used for marketing, but it's good for other context also. And something I want to point out before I go too far along is in this survey, I hyperlinked the documentation. And as I'm showing these more intermediate and advanced question types, things to be cognizant of is this good for the respondent? And will it render the way I like for the mobile experience? If you know that there's a good number of people taking it on their mobile device, it will display differently for some of these more advanced question types. So it's something to kind of check and see, is that okay? And then the third thing is always, how is it going to come out in the results? Will it meet my needs? So like these choices to pick these type of questions, one is, I think in the initial phase, it's like, oh, that's really cool. And that would be awesome to put in. But then it's kind of like the other shoulder to say, wait a second, is this good? Kind of feeling to make sure it fits the mobile experience and it fits how you want the data to come out and how you're re- looking at the results, if that makes sense. So something I wanted to show in that regard is well, how does it come out in the results and how does it look for a mobile experience? So a quick way to do that is just go directly to the documentation for that particular question. And then in this article, these jump links, you can toggle to that specifically. So how will it be for a mobile experience? So I click survey taking. This is desktop, but this is the kind of the mobile experience, and it looks pretty similar. So that's good. Okay. And then I'll go to reporting. And so part of the MPS is there's 3 categories. So if you pick 9 or 10, as far as usually it's a would you recommend us type of question, they fit into the promoter. 7 or 8 are neutrals, and detractors are from 0 to 6. So we auto generate this report into those 3 categories or buckets, depending on what number they picked. So then you can kind of look at that and like, oh, that looks good.
Somewhere between.
And then you can also look at the exporting, excuse me, and that will come in just as a value as the numbers. So just wanted to kind of go through that thinking process when I'm showing these, excuse me, to make sure you kind of get the sense of, yeah, they're great and they look great, but be thoughtful about putting them in your survey to make sure they meet your needs and the respondents also. So file upload is a great question where you can ask someone to upload an image or a document like a PDF. So that's a really nice one to add in, depending on if you need that information. Drag and drop ranking is a good one, also very interactive, and you're picking these items to rank, and it's very easy to kind of switch them to be in the order for the respondent. You can also, in the settings for this question, under the validation, you can force it to be only a certain amount. So you might have like, here there's 5 choices. You can set it to be the top 3. So they can't put in the 4th one. And there's also a minimum. So I want it to be 3. You have to pick 3, but you can't go beyond 3. So you can set that restriction. Ranking grid, depending on the number of, it's basically the same thing I'm showing here. There's, hey, how would you rank these flavors of ice cream? Same thing. You're getting the same data. It's just a different display, and they just click through. And you can't, one choice has to be number 1. One choice has to be number 2 kind of experience, right? And rating Likert scale is a really good one. Similar to MPS, it's this perspective from low to high. Instead of 0 to 10, the question defaults to very dissatisfied to very satisfied. And obviously you could change this to add more options. You could change the text. So that's a good one, just a smaller scale. I like this question a lot. Number and percent, they're essentially text box questions that have pre-validation set. So this one would be, you can't put in, what is your age? And you can't type in the text THI or TY, it has to be a number. So you can set those parameters to force it to be a number, force it to be a whole number. This one percent, so open text, but with restrictions. Image select, these are uploaded into our design library under files. So they're in our system, and then you can pull them in to be a choice. Hey, which out of these photos do you like the best, or what's the best logo? So that's single select. This is multiple select, so they can pick 2 or 3. Image heat map is a really nice question as far as getting feedback on something that's displayed visually. And the way it works is, so, the text here would explain it. And I think it's helpful to have a good description there about what it is, because it's a unique question type. But they click and you're asking for feedback on a particular zone of this thing that's being displayed. And it could be text or drawings or anything really. And they click and it's like, I really like this color. This color is awesome. Save. And then, maybe it's like, hey, this bullet point, we should add another, so they're giving feedback, kind of a positive or a negative, and that accumulates over time. And the way this reports out is it is a heat map. And in the standard report, you'll see this collection of green and a collection of this pink red color. And it's like, oh gosh, this is really good feedback. And a lot of people are saying this particular place on this image could be improved. So really good question type. Text highlighter, pretty much the same as image heat map, but just text and giving feedback on a short snippet of text. Signature, more for a workflow or a sign-off process, where you would seek approval, and this would require someone in your organization to sign off. And it's like, yes, I've seen it. Here's my signature. And that's green lighted to move forward. Grid questions, you can see it's a checkbox, but it's in a grid format. Drop down menu list, something to be aware of. These drop downs aren't customizable for each one. So I put a 0 to 5 scale for the emergency room, but it's the same for the other option, the urgent care. So once you select this drop down selector, it will appear for all of the options to consider. Continuous sum is more for budget. So if you have, well, it could be anything really, a total, but just as a idea, it's like, hey, we have this much money to spend. And where do you want to allocate the funds? So instead of kind of a general answer, like, I think we should put more funds towards this and a little bit here, it's like, actually pretend you were doing the budget and put in an amount. So it kind of forces people to be a little more specific as far as allocation. In this example, it's a percentage of customer support. Where do you spend the percentage of time? So it forces people to be a little more specific in that idea of a total and breaking it out. Text box list is just a collection of text boxes all together. You could build 4 individual text box questions, but this makes it kind of look nice. There's no line separation, so it kind of groups it together. So these are the intermediate questions. Any question at this point? I was going to go over to the advanced questions.
None so far. I think we've answered the language question.
Okay.
Actually might have another idea for that.
Okay.
Not open up a can of worms, but Mike, the question was, what would you recommend for doing a survey in 2 languages? And is there a way for exporting them both to English? And I just mentioned like if she coded her survey responses like with certain reporting values, that it would make it easier to consolidate. I don't know if there's another way, but I would just keep in mind too, like when you translate, that the meaning doesn't change, because I know in some languages, if there's like especially medical terms or anything like legal terminology, the meaning in a different language isn't always the same. So just be mindful of those things. I don't know
There's,
if there's another way to do that within Alchemer though.
yeah, and our, sorry.
I was just saying thanks. I did try it, and we did a pilot with it, and we did have the responses like on a Likert scale. So we had somebody translate it so that it wasn't just a Google Translate, so that it still got the same meaning, and then they could rank it or put it on a scale. It was just the question stems still exported in Spanish, and then we tried to just merge the two exports and add a field whether it was originally taken in Spanish or English. And it was like kind of a lot of work. So I was hoping that there would be like a question that could, I guess it would be kind of the same feature as if you could toggle from, if yes, go to this question, if no, go to that question. You know what I mean? So I guess you could do the first like 10 questions in English, and do you want to take this in Spanish, then go to question 20 and do 20 through 30, you know, those 10 questions or those 20 questions, sorry, getting my numbers wrong, but like it's sort of like a two-path diverging feature, I think.
So I'm going to do a quick demo of this. What is your age? And age. So I'm going to translate the survey into a different language. So I'm going very fast. I know this is being recorded. So I'm going to Tools, Text and Translations. And this is the English default language. I'm going to add a second language. So I will pick the language, maybe Spanish, United States, add the language. So there's two paths to do this. You can do it manually by going into each element, like the question title, the survey title, and translating it, quote unquote. So in this example, just for testing and practice, I just put in this text, and this would be the text for the Spanish as an example. And I'd also have to translate each of these answer options. Anything that's displayed, I would need to translate it to be that language. So I've translated this as a demo. The quickest way to do it, or more probably streamlined, is to generate an export. And in that export, you would do this kind of in bulk, and then you would upload it in that import translation button. So I just wanted to show you this as the quickest way, I think, or the most beneficial. And it's a little overwhelming at first. There's 3 columns to be aware of. This is our kind of internal coding. This is the default text. These first 2 columns, just leave them alone. This is where you do the translation work. And this is where you put in the text. A lot of these things at the bottom, you don't have to worry about because they might not be shown. So this is system generated messages. You'll just have to see which ones could potentially appear. Then you would have to pick, okay, I have to translate that. You've done this work, you save it on your computer, and then you upload it by importing, and then you have translated the survey. Then when you go, one thing we do recommend is under the response settings to give the ability for the respondent to change the language. Depending on the computer, what their default language is as far as display, we will automatically serve that up to them if that language is present. But if not, then they can pick which language they would like it to appear as. So I'm going to the share to kind of show this effect. So this is a translated survey, and I go to English, and I want to, my computer's defaulted to English, but I'm a Spanish speaker. I want that to appear in Spanish. Then I have this data. Then when you collect all this data, you can export it when you go to File and Export in English. So you'll have all this data come through. And there's a lot more I'm skipping, but we have a lot of documentation on this as far as how to customize the report. You can pull through merge codes to display that language in the report if you want it to be shared out in that language. So there's lots of flexibility, but this is kind of the foundation of text and translation. Any questions on that part?
Thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. Let me go back to the advanced questions. So I'll kind of preview this slider, but just grouped together. Video feedback is an add-on additional cost. This is where you would just talk into the screen and we record that video. Video sentiment, you put in a short video clip and you ask people to comment. They'll pause, they'll put a comment at minute 22. And, this is what I think at that moment. Same thing with audio sentiment. It's a audio clip and they put in a comment at a particular place and they pause the audio. Cascading dropdown is a good one for drilling down. And I was trying to think about your use case where maybe it's drilling down to a particular location as far as that health clinic or health service in a geographical location. So replace this idea with maybe state, county type of flow. So here it's, hey, what state are you? This is a car, but this could be Kentucky. Oh, now we're only going to pull through the health clinics in Kentucky. Then there's a list of just Kentucky clinics. And then, it can go further down. And this was changed to Georgia. Only the clinics in Georgia would appear. So very unique, special question type. It's really good in that context of drilling down and making it really easy for someone to select where they are on a geographical location or kind of a hierarchical structure. Grouping questions. So these are lots of different options here, dragging and dropping. This one, they create the category. It's kind of a blank template. They drag it in and say, I would put these things under this category and I'm going to name it. This one is, we've named the buckets and you drag them in and it stays. Quick sort is similar, but they disappear. So it doesn't kind of influence the next decision making. So as you drag them in, they kind of disappear. So this is good for kind of brainstorming and quickly getting initial feedback, kind of try to make it unbiased. Another grid question with drop downs, another grid question with text boxes. More marketing based. This is the thing to consider. They're polar opposites. I think, Target is inexpensive. Quality's in the middle. Maybe they have some modern things. So that's, kind of getting that sense of how people feel about a particular thing. Contact form is a quick way to get lots of questions, lots of text box questions inserted into the survey. When you click it initially, there's, I don't know how many, 10 to 15 fields, first name, last name, email, address, department, and then you can disable or delete the individual elements. The benefit of this is it's a quick way to get a contact form type of data inserted and there's no line breaks. So it looks like it's connected. User data is a little bit of an edge use case. This is related to users in the account, actual Alchemer license holders, people who log in like you to do work. We can associate, or the admin can associate data that can be pulled in this user data question. Like a department, like user 23 is in this department, so we can kind of do some auto generation of data to be displayed based on the license holder. Custom group is a really flexible question type where you can pull in lots of different question types and display it in a certain way as a group. So in this example, it's a trip, and give us information about your trip. Name, what do you need as far as the trip, wheelchair assistance, date. So all these are different question types, but they can be lumped together to be visually appealing for a respondent. And you can bring them horizontally, in that visual display, which is nice. You have that flexibility to do that work. And then the other thing is nice is maybe there's a second for each respondent. It's kind of dynamic, running with the story about a trip. It's like, hey, I actually am going on a second trip. So I filled in the information for trip number 1, and I have a second trip. So let me put in the data for that second trip. So this is a dynamic repeating option to the respondent. Custom table is similar to a custom group. And I like to think of these type of questions as umbrella questions, where you click, I want a custom table, and you're putting questions together underneath this umbrella to make it appear like it's one element. And it's similar to the custom group, but in these columns, you don't have as many options as question types that you do in the custom group, and a little bit more of a grid type of structure. So, so that's highlight of the more advanced questions. But hopefully this, this link will be helpful for you when you make those decisions to add them in. Unfortunately, due to time constraints, I wanted to really show you how to build this out in our custom group. But this would be a great one to kind of go through our documentation to kind of dive in to learn how to use it. But I think this one's pretty popular. I've seen a lot of our customers using this just because of the flexibility and how it's displayed in the build of the survey for the respondents.
Real quick, Mike, the question on that one is when it appears on mobile, or a smaller screen, how does that appear for the custom group?
Yes, so it's going to come out almost in individual elements. So it depends on the build and what question types that you pick. So you can kind of see this effect here. So it's pretty variable depending on what you pick. So some of them, so we have this one at a time interaction. So if it is a single select, and actually, shoot, I could probably do a demo of this. Actually, let me try this really quickly. I'm going to, actually, this is good for you to know about. So I built this survey, right? So this is our survey ID. And I'm copying this to search in my account to find it. I want to see the build of this. So I'm taking that survey ID and I'm going over to my dashboard, and I'm going to search not just in this folder. Oops. I want to go to all my surveys, and I'm going to find this survey. Okay. So now I want to share this out as a mobile experience. And actually, let me see if I can do this quickly. There's a lot of question types. I need to skip through a lot. Let me see if I can do that here. I'm going to go to the advanced questions. And then I'm going to, this is our best guess under device preview, the phone. So I'm going to go through this. You see this one at a time interaction. I don't have validation, so I can fly through this. I don't have to answer it. Let me see how this comes out. This is grouping. Oh, I have to go through it. Sorry. But the idea would be to really check it out for real. This is our style, and I could experience it here. The other way is go to the Share tab and click on Print a QR code. And I could scan this with my phone, and I could really go through it quickly and actually test it and validate it and see what it looks like. So I'm not really answering the question, unfortunately. It really will depend on the elements that you put into the custom group. And we're going to break them out essentially into individual question types. So there's just not enough real estate to display them all at once. So we kind of compartmentalize it and show it almost like it was built individual outside of the custom group, if that makes sense. All right, any other questions there? Okay, so the next thing I wanted to go into is, so just staying on track here. So I went through intermediate advanced question types. Now I wanted to go through this, and I want to highlight this, customize the look and functionality of your survey questions, right? And this is primarily in the context of basic questions. There's a lot more that you can do to really make it work the way you want or display the way you want for your respondents. Okay. And I want to pull over this deck, and I will go to the live demo in a second. But in the, so this is under the layout tab where I'm showing this work. And I'm going to run through this and I'll show you this live. So this is a basic radio button question type. So under this layout tab, there's a whole world of things you can do here that when I first started working in customer support, I was like, this is not, I didn't see it a lot and I didn't understand it, but it's there and it's really useful. So what I'm going to show in these slides are kind of pre-built out demos. And the reason I'm doing this slide is to actually do it live. There's a lot of back and forth and it's kind of a screen whiplash. And this is something I will share out. I'll create like a secondary deck of this with a little bit more text information. So you have this as an asset to review. So one is additional instructional text. So this is something that's easy to format in a different color. I could put italics and it goes down below. And it just makes it a lot easier to change it, that additional text, instead of doing it in a separate line on the question title. So it really stands out. Another one is going horizontal. So this is a checkbox, and maybe I do want it to be horizontal, and I can choose to display it this way instead of the vertical. The other one is columns. So this gets into survey design. You could make this question a drop down. So what do you usually buy at our store? They click the arrow to drop down, and then all these options are displayed. But there are good reasons sometimes to display everything right away. But then that length can be lengthy as a vertical scroll. Let's put it horizontally. You know, I could put in 3 columns, for example, to display it in that way. Other ones are randomize options. And this one, this is something I do want to show live. And this is actually not a great example of randomization, because in this one, I don't want other write-in to always be randomized, but essentially you want it to be dynamic for each person, to not always see one option at the top. And that could bias the data because, you know, sometimes we are lazy and we always see, oh yeah, click, it's always at the first one. That could influence that data. So you do want to have it shuffled, but I will show you how to anchor an answer option like other write-in that should not be shuffled in the middle. It should always be at the bottom. And I'll show you how to do that. Another one is you can add comments into each question type. And again, this is kind of a choice. You could do the same thing by adding another text box question that's separate. So question 3 would be, hey, please tell us more about what you buy at our store. Can you give us more context? Instead of adding a comment box associated with the question. So it just depends how you want the respondent to input that data in that open text. Another one is, so, and I'll show this also as far as options. There's ability to add on this little open text associated with an answer option, and you can adjust the width. So maybe this one, you know, it's going to be small. It could be just an ID number. There's only like 3 numbers. So I do want to make it small, or it could be lengthy, and you just have to kind of play with these numbers. 5 is this, 20 or 30, you'll start to see it expand. So you can kind of play with that also. The other one is question numbering. And an example of this would be, maybe this is logic based, this question. It doesn't show for everybody. And maybe I don't want this to be, have a number. So to make it appear that it's connected to that top one where the logic is driving the display of this. So you can customize if you want it to be at an individual level as far as showing a number for the respondent. The other one is default answer. And this is, and I want to redo this. I was looking at it before a call. So an example I think would be better would be, maybe an internal survey you're sending out to your staff or your organization. Is your address that we have on file correct? Does your address need to be updated? So you, in general, that type of question, most people haven't moved. So you could default to yes or no. Is your address on file correct? Yes, then they don't have to answer. They can move on. The ones that do need it, they take action and they would click no. So that's an example of trying to tell a story where you would use that default answer. So that is an actual answer. When it's displayed to the respondent, it's like auto punched. So you're choosing to make that click there present. And that just saves time for a respondent. There's also ways to do this for scripting and coding behind the scenes. Maybe you hide a question. You want to punch this answer for the data analytics part in the background. But this is getting really advanced, but that's another example where you might have something auto punched by default. And then the other part of this is an open text. So this is an essay. You can control the dimensions of this box. So, maybe you want it to be more horizontal. I would put in text box width of 80, so it goes all the way across. So you can really control how this looks for the respondent as far as the size. Another one is in an essay. This is a nice one where you really want them to put in more information. It's not like this text box where it's really focused and short. Like, we really want you to tell us more. And if they type in 5 words, that isn't good enough. And when they click the next page button, they'll have a validation saying, hey, you have to actually put in more. And this is something you could put in as far as, under the layout tab, instructional text, please, we're looking for, a sentence or two, for example, to really give them a hint that, yes, tell us more, right? And then on the other extreme, I remember in customer support, I had a one call and everyone was doing a good job for as far as respondents, and it was, 3 or 4 sentences. And there was one person who put in, a chapter and we were looking at the export of the data in that column and just went on forever. And that's when I showed that customer, hey, like, you could do this. You could say, we don't want you to tell us your life story, kind of thing, and like limit it as far as the maximum, right? So that's a nice thing under the, this doesn't really fit under the layout tab, but it's related to customizing that open text. And then the other ones for open text are, you can put in a default answer for open text. So this is really, the answer is already inputted there directly. So that's one option. And the other one is almost like a hint. And I think we've probably seen this when you fill in something online. There's like kind of a grayed out helper text that you put in. It's not the answer. It's almost like a little hint, almost like you do the layout tab, additional instructional text, but you're kind of putting it in the open text as a cue or a helper. And once they click and start typing, that text will go away. Okay. So those are the slides I wanted to show about enhancing the kind of basic question types, like a radio button, the checkbox, and open text that are a little bit hidden, but they're available for you and to display for respondents. So one thing I did want to show was the example of a checkbox being anchored at the bottom, one of the answer options. So I will see some of these questions you can change on the fly. So let's see if we can do that. So this is radio button, basic question, and then I'll just go to checkboxes. Actually, this isn't good data. I'm going to get rid of this. I'll do one that fits a little bit better as far as days that can be shuffled. Maybe job functions. Okay, so it's quite a bit. Job function is the question. And then I want this to be randomized. I don't want it to be in alphabetical order. So I'll go to layout and I'm going to choose randomize the options. Great. Then I want one of these, which is other write-in. I don't want this to get in the mix of the randomization. So I'm going to anchor that. but first I have to make it a checkbox. So let's make that, could be multiple jobs that you do as I'm trying to tell a story on the fly. Doesn't make total sense here, but so this is where I want to anchor this. So other write-in, these are going to randomize, but this will stay at the bottom. So I want to fix this position with randomization. Yes, great. So now let's see if it works. So whenever I put in randomization or anything kind of advanced, I want to really test it from the live link, share, view. And then great, that randomized and that stayed at the bottom. So if I do it again, this should come out with planning somewhere else. So I'll try it again. I go to view and there's operations and then that stayed at the bottom. Great. Okay. The other one is making something exclusive as far as a checkbox. So let's say that one of these, as soon as they click it, everything else is not available. This is multiple select. So now I'll go into the build of this question, and maybe when they check consulting, that's it. There's no more options for them. So I'll click here in this pencil, and then under, let's see, disable check by default. Nope, it's up here under special settings. And this is exclusive. So as soon as that gets selected, then everything else is going to gray out. So I'll go through and show this. I think it works with randomization. So I'll go to consulting, and that's here. And as soon as I click it, you see how everything else got grayed out, and there's no more options once I select that. Okay. And then the last thing I wanted to show is the other write-in for each little element. So under the answer option, architecture, I click the pencil, and under the special settings, I want it to be other write-in. And then once I save that, there'll be a little box there to adjust, right? Then I could go to the layout tab and adjust the other text box width. And it's like, actually, I would like that to be bigger. So I'll go to 30 and click save, and I kind of expanded it. So quite a bit of flexibility there under the layout option to really customize some of these basic question types like radio button, checkbox, and open text. All right, any other questions at that point? I was going to go into the question library and templates next as our kind of agenda item.
None so far. Keep going. This is the exciting part for me.
Okay, great. So same thing. I was going to go through this, and I'll switch to the live portion of this. So under the library, so the idea behind this is, and this is really important to know. So a lot of these things I'm going to show as far as the functionality is admin only in our system. So the admin has the power to add questions into the library, to customize them, to change them. That's an admin only functionality. As a non-admin user, you will have the ability to pull these in. So they're available for you to access and to bring into your survey. Okay, so I'll try to delineate these two things, but a lot of these things I'm showing is an admin function. So essentially, it's under Research Library Global Questions, and they get added into the survey. So one way, and just planting a seed, it could be you are as a non-admin user are building a survey, and you realize this is a really good question, and I think I'm going to use this multiple times. You could reach out to the admin on your account and say, hey, I look at this survey that I built, and these questions I would love to have accessible. Then the admin could go into your survey based on their power being the admin, and they could pull these into the library for you to pull them into the survey later, if that makes sense.
We need to default that so that everyone can just submit a question. Is that a permission on the back end?
unfortunately, I don't think we have a systemized way in our platform to do that, to kind of take requests. So that would be something to kind of figure out the best kind of workflow
Okay.
for your organization to, bring up that feedback. So
I can do that offline.
And, one is, like I was talking about, is like the first step is survey ID is the quickest way. Hey, I was working in survey ID 7345492, and it's question number 5. That's a great one. Please put into the question library type of thing. So, and then, they get built in the library, and they're accessible to, so there's 2, here's gender and age as an example. And now this is where I'm transitioning to a non-admin user. And this is something I want to pull in. So let me switch to a live demo of this. So I am in this survey. It doesn't really matter which survey I'm in. And I'm ready to kind of move on, and I'm building. So here's the add new and library item. So this is available for non-admin users. So I click here, and then I'll see all of the options of questions that have been saved into the question library. And this is a drop down. So inside of the library, the admin can create these folders as an organizational structure. So maybe,
To give context, Mike, just throughout our organization, every state has a library who is an admin. And so right now it's defaulted that they control that library, just so they know. So you can go into the Google Sheet and find out who the librarian is in your state. I'm also one, obviously. So it's Faith and Julie, but they're the ones that can add this in, just so to give context.
and if they, this is something to communicate with your specific admin for the state. Maybe there is a specific folder, and they, oh yeah, all of our specific ones for our state are in this folder. Please go there first. So maybe it could be like demo, and oh, that's our state, and then it's like, oh great, I want to put this in, and I just click, and I don't even know what this question is. I think it's NPS. So then it's popped in to my survey. And just so you know, this is a banner signifying it's linked, which means the admin will have the ability to pull a report from all the surveys where this particular question has been placed into. So this NPSN question could have been placed in 30 different questions with 30 different users, but they can generate a report off of this, kind of aggregating all that data across all those surveys just for this one question type. And then when you go to edit it, I'm the admin on this account. So I have this button. If you're a normal admin user, you won't be able to edit it. So you're kind of restricted as far as how they set it up, as far as popping into the survey, but you won't have the ability to edit it. But that's what that banner means. It's linked currently. So,
and just to give context, all AOS members, this is a great opportunity in our monthly meetings to suggest a question type to your librarian prior to the meeting, or even during. Hey, I work on this particular question, and I think that this should be added to the question library, not the template library, but the question library. And those types of discussions are what we want in our monthly meetings.
Yeah, and we redid this look of this left-hand menu and the text. So when it first came out with the changes, I was questioning, like, what does it mean, a global question? And then it started to make sense. Like, there are questions that are global that really don't need to be customized for each survey or each audience. And some classic ones are like demographic data. Where do you, like gender, age, some of those just basic questions. It's really good to have, but it doesn't need to be customized. It can fit anywhere. And it's almost like the beginning of the survey kind of data. Hey, what's your age? What's your gender? Great, we got that from you. And now let's really get into the real information that we want from you as far as this particular survey. So yes, it's a great question in organizations to think through what are ones that are great that we can use across the board. So, yeah. So that's the library functionality, and it's really good. And the other aspect is just, I don't want to recreate the wheel. And some of these questions could be fairly complex, and they take a little bit of time to build. Let's just put it in the library and we can pop it in, kind of thing. So it just saves time in the building phase also. Okay. And the other thing which I didn't really show is, so you can also do a whole page. So I was talking about this as being just an individual question. So there could be a grouping of questions that would be nice just to pull in as a whole page element. So there's the ability to do that too, as far as saving a group of questions as a page. Then you can pull in a whole page quickly. So it's not just one question, it could be 6 or 7 automatically popped in, and it's an individual page. So that's a helpful time saver also. Okay. The other thing I want to talk about is templates. And so this is the lens of elements within a survey. This is a template idea as far as an entire survey and copying it and using it as a resource just to copy this whole survey. So let's pretend this survey I keep going back to is something that I want to make it a template. I'm going to show you there are some options here and flexibility as far as this template idea of the whole survey. So one is you can just copy directly. So in this survey, I've used it. I'm going to here, and I'm going to copy it. And you have the option of copying the data, the reports, or other options here. We throw on this tag just so you know right away when you start building it. So I have a copy of the survey, and it's distinct. It's not linked to the original. It's fresh, and I can change it. There's no linking effect. The only word of caution that I would just let you know about is at a certain point, if you copy a copy of a copy and you kind of go down that chain over time, especially with bigger surveys, there could be a performance degradation. And that comes up in customer support every once in a while. They've been a customer for 10 years. They've used this one survey every year for 10 years, and they're on their 30th copy. It's like, yeah, there's something going on here. And it's probably time to start fresh and build the survey, an original new copy or a new survey, not linked to the copy. Such as something to be mindful of. But if you're just doing it a few times, it's not a big deal and it'll be fine. So that's one way, is just to create, a copy. Okay. So now this one, I want to make it a template in our system. So if I go to tools and I go to survey settings, then right in the middle, there's this option to make it a template. And these are the tabs for quote unquote normal survey. I'm going to go down and save this setting to make it a template, and I'll come back up and watch what happens to these tabs. So I can't share it, and there's no results available. So this really is something just to use as a template. I go back to the dashboard, and this is the template. So if I click to open it, and if I make changes to it, we're like, hey, this is a template and people are going to be copying this. Be mindful if you make a change to it. Okay. The thing that I wish we had, we don't. So right on the dashboard, it doesn't delineate this as a template. So something I think is a quick kind of workaround is just label it clearly. This is a template. Then when I go to the dashboard, I see this is a template. And I know this is something I could copy from, and it's available. Really easy to change the title once you make a copy from a template, and it's a fresh survey. You can just go up to the top and make it the title that you'd like. Then so that's one way, is just go directly to copy this. And when you do that, it's fresh. It's a brand new survey. And then I just change the title, obviously. The other way is, once you do this and you go to create a survey and you go from the drop down, nope, sorry. If you go from the main create new button, we have this option, use a template. We have a lot of kind of best guess template that might be helpful for you, but the custom template is where the templates that you create will live. So this is just another way to kind of quickly copy a template and start building. And then you're off to the races copying that survey. Okay. So there's a couple options for kind of warehousing or using a survey over and over again that you know is good. Okay. Any questions at that point or this point?
No, we're good so far, but there is a survey in there that we would love as an AOS board and library group for you guys to complete in the chat if you could. No, we're pretty much to the end of time. Should we open it up for any other questions? Do you have anything else, Mike, before we close?
No, I was just looking at the kind of agenda. I think I covered what I was hoping to cover during this time.
Okay. Okay, let's end the meeting. I don't think we see any other questions for training number 2 that we have on Thursday. That is going to be only specific for just the librarians, right? Not all AOS members. It's more for admins.
It is definitely more for admin. If you have any users in your state that doing any type of work with URL variables or has aspirations to do that with your surveys, go ahead and share that meeting invite with them. But be very mindful that it is a pretty advanced training. But of course, we're not going to close it. It's open to anyone who's interested in learning, but it is very advanced. And of course, it will be recorded as well. So once you get to that point, it will always be available for you all.
Awesome. We'll stop the recording. Thanks, guys, for coming in. And we'll see you guys. We'll see the administrators. If you want to be a librarian for your state group, that would be awesome too. Librarians are there. You could attend the meeting. But thanks, guys.